Good morning, everyone, and welcome back. I want to thank you guys for being so patient and waiting on me to start creating new content. It was a very busy December. We were dealing with our daughter had a spinal headache, and that took weeks to recover. We were out of town visiting family for Christmas, and then we got sick ourselves, which took a couple weeks to recover from. So now we are back home. Things are settled down, and I can get back in the kitchen. And while I work on additional content for you guys that is more current, this is actually a video I recorded this summer. I just never got around to editing it until now. And this is for Cowboy Candy, which is just basically sweetened pickled jalapenos. We had a bunch of jalapenos from our friend's garden. I had a few. For some reason, our garden last year didn't do as well, but they had an abundance and they let me pick and take whatever I wanted. So I quickly turned these into Cowboy Candy because it's one of my favorite all-time snacks to have with cream cheese and crackers. Put it on tacos, put it on a burger. It is one of my favorites. Now, when you go to cut your jalapenos, you want to make sure you have gloves on. You do not want to cut all of these jalapenos without gloves because you can accidentally touch your eyes, your nose, or your mouth and forget, even sometimes washing. But for me in particular, my skin is very sensitive, and so I have a reaction to peppers if I don't wear gloves. So for me in particular, I definitely have to wear them. So these were an abundance of jalapenos, but even if you don't have a garden, you can just buy fresh jalapenos from the grocery store or a farmer's market and do the exact same thing. So even if it's wintertime, you can absolutely do it. Now, that is 3 pounds of jalapenos that have been cut, and I will make sure to link the recipe below. Now, with just the scraps, I usually just toss them, but if you have a friend that's got chickens, hand it to them because the chickens will love it. So the ingredients are going to be apple cider vinegar, sugar, your jalapenos. You can see that there was garlic, there was turmeric, celery seed, and cayenne pepper. You're going to start by putting the sugar in your pot. You are then going to follow that up with your apple cider vinegar, and it's going to look like it may not be enough liquid to absorb the sugar, but it will. So now I'm going to just add in the rest of the dry ingredients, and then you're just going to give it a good stir. And the sugar will dissolve into that apple cider vinegar, so don't worry. It does tend to look like it's a lot, but it does come together beautifully. Now that I have all my ingredients in the pan, I'm going to give it a good stir, and then I'm just going to set it aside and go ahead and get my canning equipment ready. So then that way I can get the water boiling and focus in on getting the jalapenos cooked. Okay, so now that I have all the mixture together, I'm going to go ahead and fill up my pot. Now, you can do this first. For whatever reason, I didn't. Usually I do. Usually I get my water bath canister going, filled with water, and then get the water heating up while I'm doing this. Quite honestly, because I recorded this in the summer, I'm not sure why I was a little out of sorts in how I do it, but it doesn't really matter. The ingredients with the sugar, vinegar, and spices, once it's stirred up, it can just be set aside until your water is ready. It won't do any harm to anything. So I'm going to get this pot filled up, get it on the stove, and get the water going to where we can start the process on the jalapenos. All right, now that my water is beginning to warm up, I went ahead and decided to put my jars in the water this time to try this method. I know some will do it. I will say I actually prefer to keep them in my oven and keep them warm. It just makes it a touch easier, and then you don't have to worry about your jars falling over. So now with the mixture, once the jars were ready, I went ahead and I brought it to a boil, I should say, and then let it simmer for 5 minutes, and then brought it to a boil again. And now I'm adding in the pepper slices, and I'm going to allow it to come to a hard boil, basically like a raging boil. And then I'm going to reduce the heat again, and I'm going to simmer for exactly 4 minutes. And then we're going to go ahead and get that part done, and then we're going to move on to the canning process. okay, the jalapenos are done. My jars are nice and warm. Now it's time to get them filled. You will want to use either a ladle, so you can kind of just strain off the liquid, or you're going to want to use a slotted spoon. It's up to you. This is what the jalapenos will look like when they are ready to go. I just chose to use a ladle because I found it to be a lot easier, but I will tilt it and let some of the liquid drain off, just because I want to pack the jars as much as I possibly can with the jalapenos. And you will likely have extra liquid left over, and I have just found, instead of just tossing it down the drain, I will fill up jars with just the liquid, and then I will can that and process that the same amount of time as I will the jalapenos, because it makes it shelf stable. And then you can add that to marinating chicken or whatever to use in other dishes. So I'm going to go ahead and get these jars filled, and then we're going to go ahead and top it off with the liquid. And you want to make sure when you're adding in the liquid that you have at least a 1/2 inch headspace for canning. And if you purchase the canning kit from, say, Walmart, and you've got your funnel, you will have a little tool that you can use that helps you check how far down or how full you are, to make sure you have the right measurement. I don't actually know what it's called, so I do apologize, but it's just that little blue stick you can see laying on the towel. And so just to make sure, because you want to allow enough headspace for when you're canning, and again, you're going to want to make sure you water bath these. Now you could make these, you could make it in a smaller batch and stick it in the refrigerator, but if you want something shelf stable, you do have to have a water bath canner to do this properly. Now that I have all the jars filled, I am going to take my tool and press it down. What I'm trying to do is release any bubbles that could possibly be in the liquid as you pour everything in. You want to try to get all the air bubbles out so they're not trapped in once you have done your water bathing. Now that all of the air bubbles have been removed, or to the best of your ability, you want to make sure that you wipe the outside of the rims with a wet cloth. You can do it with a little vinegar water solution, or you can just have a little bit of water on it. The reason you want to do this is so that way you create a good seal. If there's anything on the top of the glass, as you process these jars, they will not seal, which means they will not be shelf stable. And that's where you can run into all kinds of problems, because the food can spoil and you may not realize it. And then all of a sudden you've made yourself sick. So you want to make sure that nothing sticky is on them at all. And if you need to, go ahead and just continue to fold over that paper towel so you've got a clean spot to work with. Also, if need be, get another paper towel as well and wet it again with either water, like hot water, or a vinegar water solution. And then you're going to want to go ahead and put your lids on. You want to make sure when you are water bath canning that not only do you have jars that have 0 cracks or chips in them, but you also want to make sure you use clean lids. The lids cannot have any rust on them, because you will be introducing that into your food that you're processing. So you want to make sure that these are clean and sanitary. I know a lot of people will keep their jars, their lids in water, like hot water, to keep them sterilized. I usually just clean mine, and I have never had an issue with it. I just usually sterilize everything right before I use it. I don't leave it in water, because actually when I did that one time, I found it did rust and I had to throw them away. Even though I was just in the same process of canning everything, they still rusted in the water, which was so weird. You also want to check your rings that you're putting on the jar. You don't want to tighten them too much. You want to be able to spin it. You like tighten it and then see if you can spin it. If you tighten it too hard, you can cause the jar to crack. You don't want it too loose because obviously all the ingredients can come out in the water bath. You also want to make sure they're not dented in any way. The things that are dented, it's totally fine to use if you say making freezer jams, because nothing has to be processed. But if you have to water bath or you have to pressure can something, you want to make sure that there are no dents in those rings, because then you won't get a good seal as well. Okay, so now that my jars are ready to be processed, I'm going to go ahead and place them into the water bath. And so these are just 1/2 pint jars. Now, as you can see, one of them fell over. You just want to pick it back up and get it upright. You don't want to leave it like that. I did have a little trouble getting it out, so you can use tongs, you can use your tool to get the jars out just however you need to. Just be careful because that water is really hot. Get it flipped right side up and then go ahead and finish filling. You may have to do this in stages depending on how many jars you have, but I just have enough to fill this water bath canner. I have the large one, so they have different sizes available. I will put a link below to the one I have. I purchased it from Walmart years ago, and they still have it, and they have it for the best price. So I also put the liquid in that I had left over. Again, I water bath it and process it for the same amount of time as the peppers as well, just to make sure everything is processed properly and safely. So you're going to go ahead is once your jars are in the water, you're going to go ahead and lift down your rack, put your lid on, and you're going to process this for 15 minutes. And after that 15-minute mark, I do like to turn the heat off, leave the lid on, and let it sit for another 5 minutes. And then that way, once it's done, I will go ahead and remove it from the water and then pull out the jars. Now that my jars are done processing, I go ahead and pull them out. I first put them onto a towel. You don't really see it in this video, obviously, because it's on the countertop and the canner is in the way, but I do like to put them on a towel first just to get some of that water off of the jar. And then from there, I'm gonna go ahead and put it onto a cooling rack. One thing you want to make sure is that you have a surface that can handle the heat of the jar when cooling. I made the big mistake of thinking that my table behind me could handle, just as long as there was towels down, the cooling process. Not right away, not when it first came out of the canner, but once it had been out of the canner for a few hours, I put it on a towel, put it on my table, and it left marks on my table. Big mistake, painful lesson. No, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, we can still use a table. It's farmhouse, so farmhouse looks old and worn anyway, so it just added to it. So just be careful. So this is on the towel when I first pulled them out of the canner. And just that way, again, it's on my granite countertop so it can handle it. And then from there, I'm just going to move them onto a wire rack so they can finish cooling and then seal properly. And with these jars, you will hear little pops, and that'll tell you that the seal is happening. All you'll do too is once they've cooled after 24 hours, you press on the top of the lid. If that lid has sealed properly, there should be no give in the lid at all. And then you will know that your jalapenos are shelf stable and ready. If you hear a pop when you press on it, if there is no solid surface, like it bounces back, then you know you need to take those jalapenos and immediately put them in the fridge, because they are not shelf stable. They're fine to eat, they're just not shelf stable. I've had that happen in the past when I've processed beef broth, where some of them sealed and some of them didn't. I must have missed a spot when wiping them down, so I immediately just take it out, put it in a freezer safe container and throw it in the freezer. Perfectly safe to eat. So just so you know, you're going to want to feel and see if there's any give to that lid. And if there is, like I said, it will bounce up and down a little bit. You'll feel it in there, but you want to let these cool for 24 hours first before checking them. And that's it. There is the liquid for marinades, and then there is the jalapenos for enjoying. And let me tell you, we are enjoying them. They're a great gift. So I just want to thank you guys for sticking around. Those that are new to the channel, welcome. I will be in the kitchen more this week and creating more content. I have a big Super Bowl video that I'm working on this upcoming weekend, and I can't wait to share that with you guys, along with a Valentine's one on making some of your own candies for Valentine's Day. So I will see you guys again really soon. Thanks again. Bye.